Marcus, first of all, how's Gavin Gunning?
Yeah, he's okay. Obviously now we'll go through the 2-week protocol in terms of following the FA guidelines on that. And obviously Gavin, he's not great on phone, so you can't communicate through mobile with him. It's got to be through text. So going by the text, he seems to be all right.
Any other injuries at the minute?
No, clean bill of health.
Jamie Osborne okay? He's had these shin splints, hasn't he?
Yeah, we've just got to manage him now, and especially like a week we've got coming up now, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. So yeah, we'll manage that situation accordingly.
Who'll come in for Gavin?
Good question. No, obviously we've got options, but I'm probably looking at the week as a whole, and I'm going to utilise the squad in terms of that. So in terms of a direct replacement, we'll probably look to it and take a different view on that, and rather look at the 3 games we've got now and pick a midfield which we believe is appropriate for those 3 games.
So you're contemplating other changes throughout the week?
Sorry?
So you're contemplating other changes throughout the week?
Yeah, of course. You know, look at the miles we're doing Saturday, Tuesday, and then followed by the home game against Crawley. So I think someone said it's over 1,000 miles we'll be doing on the road, and preparation won't be ideal. We'll be travelling up on the day to Portsmouth. So yeah, we've got to take into account that factor as well. So all in all, we'll manage the week accordingly.
Form seems to have turned around a little bit recently, doing much better at home, but not so well away.
Yeah, you know, like you said, 3 points, and we'll be sitting here today. From Saturday, we've been talking about we're hitting promotion form from the last 5 games, and against teams who got aspirations of playoffs as well. So it would have been a really good points return. So we were close, and we've got to go again. But like you said, the away form. But you know, first of all, we've got to just start not being 1-0 down after 5 minutes. That will help.
That was my next question. I'm presuming your team talk's going to be something about not conceding in the first 5?
Honestly, it's not. You know, honestly, we talk about the first 5 minutes, the first 20. We break the game down into minutes. So it's not enough. You know, we're not talking about the first 5 minutes because we've conceded away from home. I think the last 3 games, if memory serves me right, that's addressed and spoke about and practiced every single game we go into.
And a lot of those have come from set pieces, haven't they? So is it about not giving away set pieces as well?
Listen, you can't help. You know, unfortunately the game is about restarts, and certainly you would have seen on Saturday just gone, any opportunity to put that ball in the box was put in the box from restarts, whether it be a free kick in their half. Every opportunity was to put that ball in the box. So that's the league we're in, and that's what we've got to deal with. And again, that's why certain personnel play to obviously deal with that as well. And again, I believe we're equipped to deal with that as well as they're aware of the first 5 minutes and how that should be managed.
What sort of game are you expecting against Orient?
Well, we were talking about Newport, and what a tough place that would be to go, and teams found it, ourselves and Donny, and then Leyton Orient go with a bunch of kids and blow them away. Now, is it a one-off, or only time will tell? But they certainly made a lot of changes. There's a lot of youth and players playing with freedom now. I think they've probably accepted their fate, and certainly off the pitch, isn't bowling well as well. So who knows? It's one of those, you just don't know what you're going to go into.
Yeah, because they've only won twice this year, but they've both been impressive when they've won.
Yeah, and like I said, sometimes when obviously the club's is having its problems, and there's a lot of unrest, but out of that sometimes it brings you even closer together. So we'll be going in like any other game, preparing right, but probably this game, because there were so many changes from the last game played and the result they had, probably our due diligence won't be as in depth as it has been on other opposition.
You said 3 games in 7 days, and at the end of that 7 days, will you know really whether your playoffs ambitions are still on or whether they've gone?
Well, for us, I've said to the players today, we're 3 points off from getting 10 points from 5 games. And if you look at that, I've set them another target now over these next 5, which I believe is realistic and achievable. And that will stay in-house before you ask me what are those points returns from those games. But certainly, those three, and this week coming up, it will go a long way in terms of trying to get to those points. But we've got to find 3 points over these next 11 games where we lost on Saturday. So over the course of these 11 games, can we claw those 3 points back? So for us, nothing's changed. We're still pretty much focused and have that belief and still those aspirations.
Do you feel the side are good enough to call?
For me, is will it? At the end of the season, that's definitely a question you're asked. Do I believe they are? Of course I do. But we've got to show that consistency. And like I said, we nearly got it on Saturday, and I thought the supporters would have went home, although we lost. Pleased with what they've seen, the display they put in, but that's football and pulling your hair out, isn't it? On Tuesday, never played so well on the ball, but I thought it was a super performance off the ball and we get the win. We played well on the ball and pretty much limited them off the ball, and we got the balance right, I believe, and we ended up losing. That's football, but we've identified it, why we lost. So again, it's encouraging because it's something we can learn from, and that's important.
And can you tell us why that was?
Why that was? Yeah, listen, I believe it was a trend. We were going too deep. Now everyone can talk about the Dan Collins on goal, and it was a freak, and I can talk about technically he went in to clear it with his wrong foot, etc, etc. But before that, we never had the mark and screen right. We were too deep, so that allows any balls into your box. The second ball drops in your 18. So looking back at the game, we felt we probably, and that was probably due to personnel who we were up against and the opposition, the way they play, we dropped a little bit deep. So we've got to learn from that, because if we face that again, we've got to be more, I wouldn't say braver, we've got to be more organised in terms of holding the right line. So if we do lose the first ball, you take that element away of, like we saw in the first goal, it was a free cone goal, but really DC should have been clearing that from the edge of his box, never mind inside his 12-yard box. And again, the second goal, if you look at it, yes, we had half the players stop, and rightly so, because someone is unconscious on the floor, but he's on the 6-yard line, so we can't squeeze out, because actually Gavin would be playing everybody on. But I actually thought there was one or two still on that 6-yard line in the game rather than that situation. So again, a little trend. So it's important now, and you take them two incidences away, we win the game comfortably for me. So yeah, it's all about just learning. But what they get from us is we'll always create a teaching environment where we'll always want to be better and improve.
I suppose whatever happens in the next week, you don't want the season to fade out in any way anyway.
Well, we've had a great week this week in terms of, we went down to the docks, we went on, we saw the market, we went to Young's, and we saw how lucky we are as footballers, in terms of doing something we love and enjoy, and no, not for 1 minute will they take the foot off the gas, and I won't allow the season just to peter out, and certainly if we wanted to have that in mind and thinking about the beach and flip-flops and beach towels and etc, then they can have an early holiday.
You probably saw the Reece Brown goals that he scored in midweek. Is he still in your long-term plans?
Yeah, he's contracted to, next season. Obviously Reece, we're well aware of his situation and the reasons why we've done that. So yeah, he's contracted here next season and he'll be with us in pre-season.
That's great. Thank you very much.
What were the reports come back from Chesterfield that anybody played the way into your plans for Saturday?
Yeah, for us it was much needed, probably 90 minutes in the legs, rather than seeing if someone performs well to get into our thinking. We've already probably pre-planned our 3 teams over this next week, so it was just making sure that they kept their standards really, rather than playing to try and force their way into my thinking and the staff's thinking. It was more of a physical outcome and just making sure they are in the right frame and they're doing things properly, because they will be called upon this week.
And Addy got a couple of goals in that game and had a few good chances as well.
Yeah.
Is he in your thoughts, Phil?
Yeah, of course he is. Yeah. Addy knows up until prior to them goals, it wasn't the level where he needs to be. you know, and I think Addy, you know, Addy won't be judged on his goals because Addy will score goals. There's no doubt about that. And I told the group, you know, you look when we put him on, Addy will always get a chance. You know, on Wickham on Saturday, he had a great chance. He done everything right. The keeper's pulled off, you know, a top draw save. Addy has that knack of being able to get chances. You know, even at Morecambe, you know, he had that half chance in the box out of nothing. So he's got that, but what he's got to work on now is his all-round game, because to get those opportunities, obviously there's a process. So no, he's a work in progress, but ultimately we brought him in to score goals, which he will, but there's so much more than just scoring goals.
Fans forum tonight, you're looking forward to that?
Yeah, I've got to do my hair, so you see me, I'm grey now, I'll be clean shaven, put my whistle and flute on, so yeah. No, looking forward to, you know, meeting the fans and answering their questions and being upfront and open and as honest as we can. And like I said, this week has been a good week in terms of seeing the other side of football and seeing the supporters, you know, going and visit them in their workplace. So no, it's been a real humble week and put things into perspective.